The FGC is full of talented individuals. Every day, these individuals use their talents to help cultivate the scene. One of those individuals is Fighter Fanboy. Based in the DFW area, he is a competitor and streamer for the Tekken scene. We sat down with Fighter Fanboy to talk about his history in gaming and much more. Let's get the profile on this player.
When did I first start getting into gaming? I was younger. I know the first handheld console I had was the Game Boy, right? So, and that was like a hand-me-down from my dad. So he had Tetris on it, so I got hooked on starting to play, Tetris for a bit. And then it progressed into him bringing out a Sega Genesis at that time. I'd say that would be my first console, right? I remember the first game I played was, he had one called Last Battle or Final Battle, I don't remember what the name is, but it was basically Fist of the North Star in the Sega Genesis, and that game was so hard. But it was kind of close to like fighting related and all that, because you had to just like, beat up the enemies and then the bosses after each level. As soon as that happened, it progressed into the PlayStation 1. And so then that's when I really started getting into it. But yeah, I'd say that's when I started getting into gaming, is with the Game Boy, the really old gray one with the yellow screen tints and stuff. When did I realize I was an actual gamer? Man, when I started saving up money when I was a kid just to buy the games that would come out, I had to, basically, I'm little, I obviously can't work, but I had to do chores on the house and stuff. And so I would spend it all on new PlayStation 1 games. I had the demo disc when the PlayStation 1 came out, and I really wish all consoles would still do this. But I remember having Gex. I remember having, I forgot what was the name of that. It was a snowboard game back then. It reminded me of SSX. Then first one that I actually had bought was Crash Bandicoot and all that. And so I started getting more into like the games like that. I kept playing the demos repeatedly, even without having the game or anything like that. And I just kept having fun with it. But I think it got to a point where I started getting too addicted to it. And then I remember buying a certain type of game. I forgot what it was called. It was Parappa the Rapper. Parappa the Rapper was so dope, and I was like, and funny enough, the only part that caught me in the demo that made me want to buy it was that Karate Dojo level, and I'm like, that was like the only lit part I think out of the whole game for me. But yeah, then sure enough came Spyro and all this other games and all that. So that's when I started like to go into like the gaming part of the aspect. But yeah, for the most part, I think that's where it eventually started going, having this snowball effect. And when did my transition to fighting games come in? I think my transition came into when I was at a Blockbuster one time and I saw MK Trilogy. That's when I, first started getting into the fighting games officially, because there was so many characters in that roster. I think it had just come out that year. It was funny because you're a little kid. Obviously, they had like that rating for mature and stuff. My dad didn't care. He was like, okay, I'll just buy it. Don't worry about it. Props to dad for that. But that's what really got me into transitioning into like the fighting games, because sure enough, I started like playing it on the daily, hours. I did not play any of the other games I had. That was like legit night and day, and me trying to figure out how to do fatalities without having any magazine or anything like that. I'm legit trying to like do different combinations. Then came into playing MK4 on the N64 when I didn't own an N64, but I had somebody that, I knew somebody that did. And so I remember one time he lent me the console and the game. And so when I was playing it, I was using Scorpion, and out of all the years trying to figure out how to do a fatality, I actually couldn't do one. I ended up doing Scorpions, and I was just like randomly like mashing all the buttons, and I'm like, what the? And then I'm like, oh, I did it, because it's free. The screen would freeze. It was that buggy, that game, that it would freeze before the confirming for the fatality. So it was like, oh, and then it just kept going. I'm like, okay, but I did it, but I couldn't do it again after. After that went into transitioning, I saw Tekken 3 had come out on the PlayStation 1, and so I picked that up. When I picked that up, that was so much more, it was a lot faster in pace. It was so much more smoother than it was obviously transitioning from, MK4 or anything like that. This was actually refined. You know, it was a 3D kind of aspect. I know MK4 had like the 3D aspect to it, but this one I felt like it was a lot cleaner. You know, it didn't feel like unfair to the point where it's like, okay, this game has bugs, something happened, and after playing Tekken 3, that was the only fighting game I was playing out of the continuation. Even though I know I remember going to the arcades and playing Marvel versus Capcom 2, but it still did not like hook me like it did with Tekken at the time. Okay, what draws me into Tekken? I think it's more of how complex the mechanics are. Back then, I was so used to just 2D. Transitioning to 3D was a lot more challenging because there was so much more that was going on. You had to really pay attention to every little detail and moving and stuff so you don't get caught by something. 2D was just like back forward, you know, kind of playing like certain footsies and, you know, trying to keep your distance to whiff punish your opponents. What drew me in more to Tekken, it was the unique rosters it had. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like MK has his unique rosters, but Tekken shows more actual martial arts and actual real world, you know, styles as compared to Mortal Kombat, which is just the same mechanics. Each one had to be played differently. Each character had to be played differently. You didn't feel like, okay, you know, this moves probably change only a certain amount but everything else is the same. But no, each one was individual. It had its own personality. It felt more robust. And so I think that's what really drew me in, because I'm like, oh, I'm learning about, you know, these characters, like where they from, how their styles came to be. Sure, Tekken has a little, you know, stories and all that kind of give you that idea of, you know, who they are and what they're going through or whatever. And it was a lot faster paced for me. You know, I like fast-paced games. That's why I enjoyed Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I enjoyed Tekken, even though people say Tekken looks slow or like feels slow when they play. And it's, you know, when you look at, you know, recordings or actual online tournament matches, they look really fast. I think it's whoever plays it tends to feel like it's slower, but it's because you're so used to seeing the moves and you're trying to overanalyze the situation and the opponents. But it felt like, I love fast-paced games, so that's one of the other main reasons why I really enjoyed that part of Tekken. Why Leo? Well, first off, the characters' movements had some stances, but they felt solid. You know, they didn't feel like there was so much movement and like how Lei or Eddie players, you know, end up moving. Like her movement felt so much more solid and clean. So you can actually get this satisfaction of when a move actually hits without being like, oh, why did this hit? You know, or I'm surprised this hit, you know, let me just keep going and rushing this opponent down. But in her case, I think that's what, you know, and it's like one of those ambiguous type of characters where people like, you know, either she or he, and, you know, and each game, I feel like she changes character, like, you know, genders for that reason to, you know, so that way it keeps the audience happy who are actually fans and, you know, specialists with her. But I'd say it's because of her, like the clean amount of hits and how everything looks. You know, there's not a lot that goes around, and I think that's why people say she's boring, because there's only certain, you know, there's not a lot of flashiness to her, you know what I mean? But she still hits hard, you know, she's well balanced out, and I think that's what drew me in mostly to her, because I don't like going for like higher, you know, tier characters, because if I really wanted to, I probably could try to like learn the characters, but I still don't feel that same type of affection for what the character is, you know, and how, you know, the effort it takes to really make it work with that character. Some other characters just make it easier, you know, just to land certain hits and, you know, than others, and they get rewarded more for it, you know. But in her case, like, she does get rewarded, but only in certain situations, like with the wall around. Other characters can make the same amount of damage she does, like with the wall, without the wall. Personally, I chose Leo because it's a lot more, like, for me, I don't care if it's like slow or fast, you could play her either way, but it's just everything else seems a lot cleaner and seems not as gimmicky as other characters. Who was I playing before Tekken 6, before Leo was around? I would say, as much as I detest and I badmouth the character, Horong. He was so cool back then, you know, and it was so easy just to like spam the kicks back then as a kid. I started using all the characters like Eddie, Horong, Law, a lot of characters that people tend to badmouth and not like. I would always use them. For some reason, I got hooked into Law just because obviously the Bruce Lee aspect of it. But yeah, that's the main character. Yeah, it was Horong, the one that I used the most. Goals that I would like to achieve in the FGC. Obviously, more on the competitive scene, continue to compete. Maybe start off a certain type of branding. I'm working on some stuff to see how that goes. I'd like to try out some TO stuff just to like see how it works, like being in that part of the scene, you know, how much work it takes to actually do that stuff, because I've seen tournaments go really smoothly, but some go really bad. And I think, you know, part of it is also the staff and the knowledge and the experience, as well as maybe, I guess, another thing that I'd like to probably try to get done would be, I guess, trying to be part of a something, like maybe, I don't know, like a team or some group, or, you know, something that I feel like I'm being rewarded for the efforts. And I know that comes in time, so I'm in no rush with that. But I think those are some goals that I have. Maybe try to work on them starting, you know, 2021, seeing how that turns out. Well, if anybody wants to, like, you know more about me or follow me, I do have Twitch and YouTube. Y'all can follow me, Fighter Fanboy. Down for first to tens whenever you guys want, whatever time day. Heck, I'm awake sometimes at 4 or 5 in the morning. So, you know, whenever you guys want to, you know, kind of like come down and chill, you're more than welcome to. I welcome everything.